What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla stock and what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm going to talk about why Tesla's down 4.21 plus percent as of right now, around that level, why it's currently testing $279 a share at the time I'm recording this, and what happened during the earnings call to cause Tesla to drop the way it did. Before I break things down about all of this information, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And don't forget about the Webull link. The offer ends very soon. Deposit any amount of money and you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, now let's talk about Tesla, what's going on with it. Tesla's currently testing $278 a share now, once again tanking after getting their earnings call. But the question is, why did that happen? Before I say that though, let me just remind you guys that this video is going to be a little bit different from my typical videos. So if you want information on what's going on with like SPY, NVIDIA, the QQQ Meta, and all those other tickers, I talked about that during my earnings released video where I broke down what was happening with Tesla's earnings. The numbers came out and the financial statements all came out earlier. So I broke those down. If you want more information about all of that, that's going to be in this video right here about the earnings release. But this video is going to be more about the call and then what happened to Tesla afterwards. I also gave you guys my prediction for earnings like earlier on during the day. I was anticipating downside, and that is what happened. But that is nothing for me to brag about because you have to remember earnings are very, very unpredictable. You can't always predict them right. It could have gone either way today, right? It could have gone either way, but I was just looking at what Musk said beforehand, and I was taking that into account, and I was leaning more bearish after this, and that is what ended up happening. So, like I said before, I mean, I wasn't giving any financial advice when talking about it, and sometimes I could get them right, sometimes I won't get them right because it could be very hard to predict. But now I want to break down why this happened, right? I'm not going to talk much about SPY and the other tickers as well, once again, because I just want to focus on Tesla. This is my fourth video of the day as well, because so much information came out for Tesla. And if you want to see, once again, more information about other tickers, check out this video, the one called Earnings Released. That's where I'm going to talk more about like SPY and the others. But for now, let's talk about Tesla, what happened during the call. So once again, we have some numbers that's basically showing on the site about how the operating margin was 9.6%. The operating income was $2.4 billion with net income at $2.7 billion. And once again, the non-GAAP net income was $3.1 billion. Operating cash flow at $3.1 billion. Free cash flow at 1.0 billion. Once again, not bad for them considering the investments they're making. And what's really good for them is we're seeing the Cybertruck factory continuing to improve. So they did very well with the Q2 deliveries, once again beating many of their, or basically all of their records essentially. But the problem was the margins did decline a little bit, but they weren't that horrible. But what is a little concerning would be the guidance going forward. And basically, in a nutshell, okay, Q3 is likely not going to be that strong for Tesla because they made some important announcements about how production may not be increasing. And they also mentioned that for the short term, because of the rate hikes, this could have a big effect on their ability to produce more cars, their abilities to improve and maintain the margins that they currently have. And they also said it's very unpredictable, right? So this caused a lot of investors to start taking some profits. And then they mentioned that for the longer term, okay, that's what Elon Musk was talking about. The longer term is still very bright. He said Tesla stock could 5x quite easily for the very long term, so many years out. So it's still, once again, very awesome for Tesla for the long term. For the short term, they said it's unpredictable because of the current recessionary environment and the higher interest rate environment. Now let's talk about some things that Elon Musk and the others were talking about. They basically mentioned the importance of cost reduction measures, future growth to be ensured, and generating more free cash flow. They mentioned that we're going to be anticipating, once again, them meeting their goal of over 1.8 million cars produced, which they most definitely can achieve. But the question is, what about for deliveries? They are still seeing growth and they are mentioning that things are looking pretty good for them so far. But they are warning us once again that we have to be careful for the shorter term because Elon Musk said, and I quote, that the stock market tends to be very exuberant. It tends to be very, very volatile over pieces of news. But he said for the longer term, going long term, he's still very confident in Tesla's future. It's very obvious in his opinion. And they talked about the roadmap and many other of the innovations. Now, for the transcript, we had Elon Musk speaking himself. He said that Tesla was doing very well. This is like what he was saying. We saw record revenue, deliveries delivered very, very high numbers, good production, and the Model Y was the best selling vehicle of any kind globally. Once again, he mentioned that there are lots of achievements by the Tesla team, giving them some credits. And then he mentioned that Q3 production will see a slight decrease in production. That's what Elon Musk said, and I quote. He also mentioned that there's going to be a lot more benefits of training with the autonomy. They're going to be looking at more ways of taking data to build a neural net, which is going to be used for training and helping them to use this data to improve the driving experience, the driving capabilities, and the performances of the vehicles moving forward. They also mentioned that success in AI endeavors is going to be a function of talents, unique data, and computing resources. And they have many big capabilities which are going to continue to grow. They mentioned the Dojo training supercomputer is designed to lower the cost of the neural net training, and that's going to be important for FSD. They also mentioned that they're going to be using NVIDIA and Dojo for now. That's going to be used for the neural training net. And going forward, they have over 300 million miles that have been driven using the FSD beta. And that's important for them because it's going to give them the data they need to improve the product because it's constantly learning on a day to day basis. You mentioned the Cybertruck is coming, it's looking very, very good. Tesla has the charging standards. It's also called the North American Charging Standard. Ford, Mercedes, GM, and all these other companies are adopting them, and more will continue to do so. FSD is growing, and they are seeing lots of improvements in their licensing of the lithium ion and other facilities, and we're continuing to see things grow for them. They mentioned that Q2 saw lots and lots of growth and it's going to continue moving forward. But they mentioned that for their maximum production, we could see a slowdown potentially in Q3. So that's their warning for everyone. And that's part of why Tesla started to drop the way it did. Slowdowns in Q3 are expected. We may not reach the same amount of production, maybe not even deliveries as well, maybe deliveries included too. That's what we saw in Q2. And they mentioned that they could see changes to their margins as well, but we don't have enough information for them to predict it because Elon Musk said that Q3 is going to be very hard to predict in very, very important detail. They mentioned that the 4680 cells are continuing to grow, but the good thing about them is they're going to become a very good mechanism to help the Cybertruck with better cells, which are 10% higher energy density than the current production, and they're continuing to improve the product nonetheless. On top of that, they talked a lot about their improvements to the software, the hardware, power walls being installed all over the place, and how Tesla Energy is continuing to grow. And they mentioned that once again, we're going to see more and more better costs for them. They also have joint efforts with Panasonic for battery production, and they're benefiting from changes to aluminum and steel prices. They're working very hard to reduce costs in Berlin and etc. And then they were talking about FSD improvements, which are going to be utilized and basically modified for different cars. Elon Musk talked about that as well, and they're going to be allowing the transfer of FSD, which is pretty good news for them in Q3. They also mentioned that the Cybertruck should be coming out for actual production release later on this year, which is bullish news from a fundamental standpoint. And Elon Musk also talked about improvements to Optimus, which are going to be used. And they mentioned the possibility of basically using the parts to create a robotic skeleton and then also like a robotic bodies for literal humans, which can be very cool to help them around the world. So that's very cool as well. But Musk said that he does not have a crystal ball. He can't always predict the future perfectly. He said that he loves the long-term shareholders. He loves us, so that's awesome. Once again, he said to be very careful. He said we are in turbulent times. Things are becoming very tricky for them, especially looking at the macro shocks they can't really control. And he mentioned that the Federal Reserve has made things more difficult for Tesla. Despite that, the long term is still bright, as Elon Musk continues to reiterate. And going forward, there wasn't much else that was said that we don't really know of so far. Tesla would continue to grow moving forward. I'm going to keep scrolling down to see if there's anything else I missed. But that's pretty much it. The majority of the things that they talked about from their products to the growth in the energy sector. Then they also talked about their different gigafactories, how they're working very hard to try to bring down costs in Berlin and Austin, but they're still a little bit high. So they're still working on that basically. And Musk said that logistics tends to be underappreciated. And he also mentioned that the downtime expected for Q3 of 2023, there was basically like questions asked about it, and SAC responded by saying that they don't know the exact number of cars that will be impacted, so they don't really have enough data to say anything about it. But that's about it. They basically ended it from there. There's a lot of information about their products, but most of it was already known data. We already knew most of it. The reason why Tesla's selling off the way it is, it actually made a new low of the day at the time of recording this. Now it's hitting the 277s, continuing to sell off, is because guidance was not that strong. For the long term, it is strong for the like really long term for many years out. But for like the shorter term, if you want to use that term, so shorter term could be used to like describe the next quarter, the next few months. That could be like a more short term projection for those longer term investors from their perspectives. So when Musk was talking about that, he was referring to Q3 in that manner. And basically, the more like short or medium term, however you want to define the next few months, are not going to be that strong for Tesla, in their opinions, looking at their production, looking at their margins, and looking at other factors such as the profitability of the company and whether or not they could still maintain, a relatively good amount of free cash flow and just other factors like that. So there is uncertainty, right, about how Q3 is going to go, and investors don't like that. There are talks about how production is going to possibly decrease. That's also bad news for many investors. They don't really like to hear anything like that. So these are the main reasons why Tesla sold off the way it did. But the numbers itself that came out from this quarter were quite good. They beat on EPS and revenue. Margins were not that bad. Gross margins were all right. Operating margins were not, they were like okay, I would say. And overall, it wasn't really a bad report currently. It's just that the market's very forward looking, and that's why we're selling off the way we are. Tesla's currently testing this 276 level now. It actually sold off even more. It's almost 5% down. We're going to be watching support now very close to 275. If that fails us, the next major support level will be closer to the 272s. So it is tanking quite a bit. And going back to my previous videos, I predicted Tesla would pump all the way up to about $300 approaching earnings. We hit a high of 299 today, so it came very close. Then in my video, my prediction was, or I would say like my educated guess based off previous cycles and what Elon Musk was saying and previous earnings was downside after earnings, Tesla tanking. I give you guys a warning about it, but nothing I said was financial advice, and there's no way I can always be correct about these because playing earnings is kind of like a gamble in a way because you don't always know what's going to happen. Even if Tesla did very well in earnings, it could sell off just like how it did today. And sometimes even if Tesla didn't do that great, if the future is strong, it could always still rebound, right? So it's very hard to predict these. I just wanted to tell you what I thought was more likely, and that is luckily what ended up coming true. And for now, Tesla is still looking quite weak. So for tomorrow, especially when we open, I don't expect Tesla to just rebound insanely hard. What's likely going to happen is we might still see more and more fear being incited by the media. We might see more sellers come in, especially from the retail side. And then some more institutions could start selling a little bit more tomorrow. So it could cause this whole market wide slowdown. I mentioned earlier in my video my intraday video today that we might see a sell off in the markets. We're getting some bearish signals. And if you look at SPY, it's currently at 453 right now. So it dropped below the low of the day today and also at levels we saw from like the previous day. So it's starting to slow down. We'll see how the market is performing by this. Also, remember that Netflix tanked pretty hard. It's down almost 9%. Man, this thing is tanking very hard. It's currently in the 430s. So Netflix came crashing down with Netflix being a giant and Tesla being a bigger giant, and both of them coming down pretty hard off not so good earnings. And, with guidance not being that strong, this could lead to more fears for other companies for earnings. And this will have a big effect, a ripple effect on the entire tech sector. For that reason, this could cause a slowdown in the markets for tomorrow. For my video from earlier, my penultimate video or my second to last video, I said the earnings were released for Tesla during that time, and I talked about SPY and all these different stocks. Well, I also went over the bearish cases on those, so those are more likely to play out now that Tesla is tanking the way it is, alongside other companies like Netflix. But it's not the end of the world because there's some companies that could be more resilient, like Nvidia, trying to hold up and bounce. So watch the levels very carefully, like I said before. Watch that video if you want information on Meta, the QQQ, and etc. And on top of that, looking at Tesla, it still is looking very weak. It is still starting to sell off, as many people are once again very scared about how Q3 is going to go. And it's leading to this domino effect of more and more sellers coming in. Is this major capitulation? I wouldn't really call it that because we're only down like 5%. But remember, Tesla's up, over 100% compared to where it was many, many months ago, right? So this is not like a straight up insane amount of capitulation. This is significant, I would say, to some degree, as we're down 5% in one day, just in the after hours alone. But it isn't something so crazy for you to lose your mind over, right? Things like this happen to companies all the time. It is okay. It's not Tesla's fault that the macroeconomic environments are like this. And going forward, we're still very bullish for the long term, just like what Elon Musk was saying. The long term, it's like a no-brainer. Tesla has so much potential, not financial advice, by the way. And for the short term, be prepared for some pain and some more volatility. And until we see each other once again tomorrow morning, I hope you all take care. Tesla to the moon as the long term is still very bright. And peace out.